Your host, Tariq Mendez, takes you on a journey with guests from all around the world. Broadcasting around the world. Around the world. This is Tariq Talk.
But again, this is beyond just the surface. I started to think about painting and sort of similar way that I mentioned with the watermelons, things that I love, things that I've learned, and I added the egg yolk so I can make it into tempera. The tempera lasts really long. I like the surface. I like the way it feels. It's not, I love painting. I gravitate more towards like Rembrandt, Goya. Those painters who use a lot of thick, heavy paint. I like the way it feels. I like the way it looks. I like the way the paint is used in a sort of model-like way. Mm-hmm. It's not just like flat, a flat surface. Yeah. There's sometimes where thicker paint may cast a shadow, a very smaller shadow, or it may catch the light in a different way. So I'm really thinking about those sort of aspects of painting. The pose is, so for one, I'm focusing on ideas of isolation, loneliness, alienation, and sort of being alone, and I felt like that would be, I'm thinking of what ways can I find things that most people can identify with, and how can I transcend in that way. So I figured, I've already been in isolation and prison. I've already been alone. But I think that's something that most people experience at least at one point in their life. Yeah. Most people feel like, I'm alone, I'm by myself. And it's not a great experience all the time, but it's also an experience that, like I said, people can relate to. And not in a sense of like solitude, where you kind of want to be alone and you're enjoying it, but just feeling lonely or feeling alienated, feeling like you
against the world type of vibe.
Or you're rejected, or that sort of thing. So along with that, I'm thinking about how can I depict these things, and I came across, not that I came across, but I started to think about what paintings I might have, might illustrate that, and what artists, and I love Edward Hopper.
Oh my God, me too.
So I started to think about Edward Hopper, and I started to think about, well, what does he do, and why does his painting seem so lonely sometimes? And it's usually because he either has one or two people in the painting, and then when he does have more than one person, they're really not paying attention to each other. They're kind of like, there's a guy reading the newspaper, and then the woman's over here, and their eyes aren't meeting. They're like really separate from each other. Or like I said, it's generally one person. So I decided I wanted to use these surfaces to show just one person, alone by themselves. And this is also a self-portrait. And I didn't want to exactly use Edward Hopper. I wanted to have some of that feeling, ingrained in there. But then I came across like Edouard Manet's The Luncheon on the Grass. Okay. And there's if you know the painting, there's the nude woman, and then there's two men next to her, and then the men have on clothes. Okay. They're clothed, and she is nude. So when I recognized it, I said, you know what? She's kind of isolated and alienated in that way. She's the only person there who doesn't have on clothing. Yeah. And she's also directly addressing the viewer. She's also looking directly at the viewer. So I took reference from that pose, and I used a sort of similar pose. She's also sort of sitting in a similar way, with that one leg up and sitting on the grass. But then also Alexander Cabanel has a painting called The Expulsion of Lucifer, where Lucifer is being expelled from heaven, and he's being alienated in that way. but he's also posed in a very similar way. He has his hand up and he's scowling.
Yeah.
And
I think I know which one you're talking about.
Yeah. So if you look at the poses, those paintings, those poses are really similar.
Yeah.
You know. So I took and I said, let me try to combine those poses into a way.
That's genius.
And have them where, for people who are familiar with the art, they can look at it and say, oh, I know, where he referenced that from. Yeah. And then it gives me a point where they're like, all right, well, he knows something about art history. He knows something about, the things that he cares about. But also to make it more unique and updated, they also say like history repeats itself. Mm-hmm. So this is my point of repeating, that aspect of history. Mm-hmm. So, it's the culmination of those things. And then I started to think about, what do people do when they're alone? Mm-hmm. And how do people cope with being lonely? And on one hand, I have another painting back here I may want to show. It's a watercolor that I started. But on one hand, I said there are ways that people cope with being alone, maybe alcohol or social media or, ways to distract yourself. But I wanted to do like themes of things. Mm-hmm. So I said, let me find like what do people play when they're alone? And I remember growing up, my mother would play solitaire. She taught me how to play solitaire, the card game. Yeah. And I remember playing it very often. I was always partial to being by myself. So I remember playing this game often, and then crossword puzzles. And I said, I like crossword puzzles. They kind of make me feel smart when I can do them. But then if you look at, like, nobody's on the train sharing crossword puzzles. No, yeah. You do it by yourself in most cases. And very often I see people on the train either on their phones or with the actual books doing crossword puzzles. So I started to incorporate this sort of crossword puzzle motif as a grid.
Oh, that's really cool.
And I started to think about also, what does that mean as far as like having some sense of structure, because it's a grid, it comes across as more structured. And a crossword puzzle is really structured. Like it's mostly symmetrical. Yeah. But I wanted to like have a sense of a feeling of being chaotic, like emotionally, emotional chaos and turmoil. So I took that crossword puzzle motif and instead of having it, being very rigid and structured in that way, I just started adding, random spaces to it so that there's no rhyme or reason behind, if you're trying to fill in the words on this, you can't actually fill in any words because it's so, mixed up and confused in that way. And from there, I just wanted to keep building and keep adding on. So this is in process. And then also these are actual prison sheets. And the prison sheets are much easier to source. You just go to the company that sells the
Can I touch it?
sheets. Absolutely.
Because I always wondered. It's like pretty hard.
Yeah. I mean, they're cheap, really cheap. Yeah. And I wanted to allude to suicidal ideation without being on the nose and blatantly obvious about it. So the best way I could do it is, what's one method people use? They use hanging, unfortunately, and they use prison sheets. Mm-hmm. So the intent is to, once this series is established, to have all of them hanging in that way from these prison sheets and not, on a wall, to have it in a little bit more of a interactive way where you may have to walk around it in that sort of way. So that was the culmination of that, and that's currently the series that I'm working on.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's really cool. Is this the first piece of the series?
So I've just got my first contemporary art sale, which I'm very fortunate about. Thank you.
Well, I first thought this was for, besides self-ending, I thought this was for like liberation. I don't know if you were a bad kid like me that you would try to like put bed sheets to crawl out to sneak out as a kid. So I thought this meant for me like escape, like, you know, putting together, trying to get out. And then this, I thought it was like first like a blueprint of like a prison floor, showing like who's in and who's out. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then I thought this could also be like cells because you're tightly packed, like the cells in your body, like being packed, like and then being packed like in solitary.
I'm glad you mentioned the cell
like,
thing.
you know,
I'm glad you mentioned the cell thing because that was also next, like one of my next ideas was thinking about cells, thinking about prison cells and actual cells in your body and that sort of thing.
Because it's like two ways. Like, you can either like, you know, liberate yourself mentally because you can't get out, unfortunately, or you can physically get out by force.
Thank you.
Yeah, this like evokes so many feelings, but like this still has me like appalled because it shows like how much security, because these are like pretty big screws. Yeah. Right? So it shows you like how everything's like so locked down and, you know, everything's like so precisely monitored. Yeah. That's so crazy. And I love how you made this look like linen, like the texture of the paint. Because you said you used the yolk. But still, it looks like you transform like the metal into like a linen canvas type of material. Yeah. So it makes you do like a double take, like, wow.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you. Beautiful work. Thank you for sharing.
Thank you. So going along with that series, what I want to do is I want to be able to show, you know, as many techniques. This is watercolor. So I want to be able to show as many techniques as I can as possible. And also, you know, show a variety of, you know, experiences in this series. Yeah. So this would be more about me having been incarcerated, and this is, you know, at home. If I'm at home, another self-portrait. Yeah. And I'm just at home and I'm, you know, feeling alone. And what do I do when I'm alone? Yeah. What do I do when I'm lonely? So I'm, you know, I have my phone. I'm scrolling on my phone through social media. I don't particularly drink, you know, but I have drunk and I'm not against it. You know, if we're at like an event, a gala, something like that, I'll have a drink. Yeah. But I'm not, you know, a huge fan of alcohol. Just isn't for me. But what are ways that people cope? Yeah. And I didn't want to do the games. I wanted to restrict that series to like, you know, other ways. Yeah. And then this one is like, you know, social media, alcohol. You have an ashtray. Everybody in New York is like smoking marijuana now. Yeah. So I wanted to depict those sorts of things. And then also a more intimate, you know, whereas this one is like kind of addressing a viewer. And like, you know, kind of shelling up and, you know, more reserved, where this one is as if like you're a fly on the wall, a camera is there somewhere. And
more like relaxed, you're in the zone by yourself. Yeah. Because I feel like whatever you go through emotionally, I feel like us humans, we all do that pose. Do you know what I mean? Like, either you're like on the table, I don't like to cry in public, so if I do cry in public, I'm always like private, you know what I mean? Yeah. Or like if something bad happens, like you lean against the wall. You know, I feel like as humans we tend to do
it's a
like
self-nurture, self-soothing pose,
I mean, like you captivated that so well.
Yeah. And I mean, I think the painting I have at the series I have at the Center for Art and Advocacy, I'm literally hugging myself. Yeah. So and it's also I wish I could be able to show it. You know, maybe you'll see it if you come stop by or if the collector shows it somewhere else. Yeah. But it's also and I can talk about that as well. It's a self-soothing pose. When I was in there, a bat flew inside of my cell, and the bat died.
Bat?
Yeah, a real bat.
Oh my God.
Yeah, and it flew into my cell and died. But the bat is also, you know, when they hang, they hang like that. So it was like, you know, like, wow, this is perfect. Yeah. You know.
Wow.
So yeah, I just want to continue for now this series of isolation, loneliness, how do people cope, addiction, you know, all of those sorts of things. And then from there, I'm already, you know, thinking about what my next series is. I just got to get this done. Yeah. I just got to get this done.
Thank you for listening to Tariq Talk. Follow Tariq Talk on all social media channels and check out the video interviews online.